Well, I absolutely see the fact that, because I can't even really say it like the light is at the end of the tunnel, because what I truly see is that, here's another scientific way of explaining it, light being energy, in thermodynamics they say that the total sum of all of the energy in the universe never diminishes and it never increases. It just changes form. And it changing form is how anything happens on this planet. So truly, the light is already here. It's the fact that we're not perceiving it for what it truly is in many ways. We're closing ourselves off to it. And it's a form of psychological contraction. And the way that I get into this is another dualistic force. There's contraction and expansion. And this can be traced all the way back to the understanding of the breath of Brahma, the inhalation and exhalation of Brahma. And the reason why I get into this is because the solutions do not need to be given to us. They need to be drawn out of us. And I always use the example of the word educate actually comes from, I believe it's educo, which is, I think it's either Latin or Greek. I apologize, but it's to educe or to draw out of an individual. So this is completely opposite from what we typically think, especially in the educational system today, is we need to shove information into a student. We need to give, and students need to attain more information, when in fact it's the other way around. Well, it's like a seed. You don't you give certain tools and certain for the grow into the plant, but really you can't be the one that's really forcing it to grow. It has to grow on its own. And in a way, what's inside that seed is going to be what grows into that tree. So, so the reason why I give that example is the fact that I believe that all the solutions are already within us in many ways. And it truly has to do with a level of consciousness. It has to do with the ways that we are actually behaving based upon our perception of the world. And the reason why I put it that way is that yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And what I say is that most people think that what my work entails is for us not to take action. But that is actually completely opposite. I actually believe that we should be taking more action. We should absolutely be taking action, but basically, simultaneously, what we need to do is be very conscious and aware of that action and to learn from the actions that we're taking. Because if you think about it, when I trace everything back to its source, consciousness in general is learning of itself through us. It is learning of its own nature through us, our physical bodies, our vehicles, if you will. And the reason why I put it that way is if you look at anything in nature, everything is curious in a way. And I'm not just talking about humans or animals, because we see curiosity and we can comprehend the curiosity of a human or an animal and why they want to tinker with their environment to learn about it. But the thing is absolutely everything, the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, they're curious in a way because that's how they evolve. That curiosity is actually a primal drive within all things to know about its own environment, to adapt to its environment. So we see minerals doing this. Minerals adapt to, plants adapt to their environment, animals adapt to their environment, and so do humans. And should there be an evolutionary chain post-human, or anything like that, I can only assume that it would be the same principle that drives it. And it's this curiosity that truly has us learning about the world. And that's why I say when there's that duality playing itself out, if you were to become the observer, then you would learn. And you wouldn't have an enemy. You would have no need for there to actually create your own enemy if you understood the actual drama that's being played out. So the light at the end of the tunnel, I believe that yes, right now I try to put my words into action. So I know you and I have talked about things in South Africa to do. I'm traveling around, trying to help teach about permaculture, about law and things like that people can actually put into action to challenge themselves. Permaculture, that's a way that people can feed themselves. But there's plenty of other things, like, say, law. My friend up in Canada that is, he's a sovereign and a great inspiration to me. He teaches these things as well as I do. He teaches people so they can go and use these tools in court or with the police officer or things like that to understand law a little bit more. But it's not just about law. It's what's inherent within that. You have to confront authority to do this. And that is what I see so essential. I don't care if people are getting away with parking tickets or getting away with like not paying their taxes and things like that. I truly don't care about that, because that doesn't inherently mean that people are learning about themselves. But the fact that they have to use these tools and to be comfortable enough to take their own understanding of law and go up against an authority figure that typically everywhere around the world, people in some way, shape, or form are intimidated to some small part. Going up against that and actually facing your fears, facing these authority figures, and show that, you know what, we're all humans, we're all on the same page, and regardless of the established idea that you're an authority figure, I don't buy into that. And that's people facing their fears. That's what I like, is the fact that people are actually having to confront themselves in order to be in front of a judge and say that you have no jurisdiction over me, or to go in front of a police officer, an officer of the law, and say you have no jurisdiction over me. Because that takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of challenging yourself and getting yourself to the point where you can actually make that stand and say, no, I will not be subservient to you because I'm a human, you are a human, we are on the same level. The only master that I truly have is whatever I choose for that to do. All of us are equal. And so that's why I go around trying to teach these things. Permaculture is another thing. So I think there's a lot of action that and obviously ability is key to all of this. I mean, obviously, permaculture is a way of using what agriculture would pollute the earth with, all that waste, using that waste as a tool, as a fuel or a food for another part of the system. So in a sense, in a true working permaculture, you have a yield of food so you can feed yourself. You're not polluting the earth or the air or anything else. You're actually feeding other species, and it's a closed circuit, so you're not having to be the laborer. We're taking out the need for people to labor on farms 9, 10, 11 hours every single day to keep up a typical agricultural farm. It removes the need for the laborer because nature naturally grows food. And I don't truly understand how we've forgotten this, but nature takes care of these things for us. At what point in history did we believe that we have to do all these things? Whether it's through naivety, through just wanting to control nature more, we've actually boxed ourselves in. We've turned ourselves into a slave of our own design. Agriculture is our design, and we have become in some way enslaved by it, where now we want other companies such as the Monsantos and such as all these other companies to take care of the food aspect of things, because we're like, oh my God, it takes so much time and energy just to yield a few amount of crops. Well, if it were done correctly, if it were done intelligently, if it were done by using the design that nature already has inherent within it, then it wouldn't require as much of the laborer. It wouldn't require all the pollution. It wouldn't require all these things. And that, truly, how does that understanding come about? From taking a huge step back and looking at the situation for what it is. Instead of saying, you know, we need companies to take care of this for us. We need machines to take care of all these things for us. Well, wait a minute. That comes from lack of imagination. Because if you were to take a step back, you would see that there already is a worker that's begging to do that work for you, and that's called nature. So that truly, to me, it boggles my mind how people are so focused in on a tiny little problem and think that it has to be technology that saves us. It doesn't. In many ways, yes, technology can do things that nature cannot, but in other ways, nature can do things that technology absolutely cannot. And nature does it without a use of waste. And in many ways, nature maintains itself, just like any organism. Nature will maintain itself. And the one thing about technology is it requires a human to allow the technology to adapt to changes in the world. Nature naturally adapts to the changes in the world because it is one and the same. It's the same force. So it adapts to its own nature the more it learns about itself. And that's the thing. Using this understanding, this whole understanding would have come about naturally if we would have been listening to nature the entire time. We never would have had to have gotten to this point. But unfortunately, well, I can't even say unfortunately, it just so happens that we are at this point in nature. And I think instead of looking at the world in a crisis, which when you perceive the world in crisis, then what naturally happens to your physical chemistry, your body chemistry? You start to contract. You get thrown into that survival mode. Well, oh my God, like I don't know, the population's growing so much that the environment's changing so much. I better stockpile a bunch of food, grab my guns, run out to the cabin in the middle of the woods, and just wait this whole thing out. In my opinion, that's not life. That's not living. Because you're not truly living if you're in that flight or fight mechanism. That's not life. That's survival. And in many ways, you're already in the process of decaying and into death because that's not it. It's facing these challenges because I always give my contention is there is absolutely no problem that humans face that we cannot overcome, that nature in itself cannot overcome. And in some way, shape, or form, we've lost that idea, so we feel that we need to go into solitude. We feel that we need to isolate ourselves to protect ourselves, to keep everybody else away from us because we don't even trust our own neighbors. And we see that completely inherently within the Patriot Act. And many people would love to point out the fact that the Patriot Act went through with, without too many people reading it, and that there was this big uproar. But the other side of the thing about the whole Patriot Act is the fact that many people, many people, I would even go so far as to saying that close to half the population in many of what I've seen statistically actually agreed with the Patriot Act. About because you'll see in documentaries and you'll see in books and things like that that the Patriot Act was completely repugnant to 100% of all humans, and it was just the elite that was pushing it through. That's not true. There are many people in the United States that were absolutely saying in the back of their minds, they were like, well, I'm not a criminal. Absolutely, push that through. I want all the criminals. My next door neighbor could be a criminal. He could be a terrorist. I don't want him around. I don't want any terrorists in my neighborhood. So absolutely, go ahead and tap the phone lines. Go ahead and take people away with no court hearings or anything like that, and have them disappear so you never see them again. There were many Americans that absolutely agreed with that. And the point that I'm trying to make with this is the fact that we're complying with all of this. We are the essence that's driving all of these things that we're complaining about.
So again, it goes back to the issue of self. Making all these things happen, around the world. But what I would like to talk a little bit more, and you've already touched base on it, is that we are starting to enter a time where we do need to start focusing on solutions, practical approaches towards the problems that we're facing inside of ourselves, and that they are projected, into the surrounding environment. And what I particularly want to talk about, just for a few minutes, is if you could tell a little bit more about the cooperation that we're starting to have between yourself and Truebook and the work of Stephen Potter in Zambia, and why actually have you decided this is something interesting that I should pay attention to, and maybe we can make something out of it which everyone can benefit from. If you can just give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Specifically with the work that you, Stephen, and myself have been talking about, one of the things that really stood out to me was, again, talking about personal reflection, I realized that really I've made documentaries, I've done radio shows, I've done lectures and presentations and talks all around the world, and I've talked about some of these problems I've talked about some of the